As Leonardo DiCaprio makes his entrance onto the illuminated stage of Celeb Talk Central with Andrew Morris, spectators anticipate a genuine, modest dialogue. Andrew, however, isn't interested in adulation. His agenda centers on generating controversy. With a subtle smile, he reorganizes his prompt cards, prepared to corner Leonardo with a deliberately provocative question designed to ignite outrage. The studio atmosphere thickens with tension as the cameras capture the unfolding scene. The pivotal moment approaches. Yet Andrew remains unaware that within moments, his meticulously orchestrated ambush will collapse spectacularly. Leonardo's forthcoming response won't merely silence the studio audience, it will fundamentally alter Andrew's understanding of reality. Before continuing with this narrative, please share your viewing location. If you enjoy content of this nature, subscribe to our channel, as tomorrow we'll present another exceptional story for your consideration. New York pulsated with its characteristic energy, a metropolis perpetually in motion. The afternoon sun descended, casting golden illumination across the cityscape as Leonardo DiCaprio entered his residence, casually folding back the sleeves of his dark shirt. He had just completed a rare period of tranquility, an uncommon luxury given his demanding schedule. When his mobile device vibrated on the kitchen countertop, he sensed something unusual. Retrieving it, he noticed an incoming call from his representative, Elliot Rivera. "Elliot," Leonardo acknowledged placidly. "Leonardo, we need to discuss something. You've received an invitation to appear on Celeb Talk Central with Andrew Morris." Leonardo positioned himself against the counter, thoughtfully stroking his jawline. Andrew Morris had established a reputation for pushing boundaries, ensnaring guests, and manufacturing viral controversies. "Interesting," Leonardo reflected. "Interesting?" Elliot responded incredulously. "This individual is predatory. You're familiar with his methodology. He constructs traps, manipulates guests into verbal missteps, then exploits those moments for engagement and headlines. I wouldn't recommend accepting this invitation." A faint smile appeared at the corner of Leonardo's mouth. "So you believe I might make a verbal misstep?" Elliot exhaled audibly. "No, that's not my concern. My point is that his intention is exploitation. He aims to distort your statements. That's his standard operating procedure." Leonardo considered Elliot's caution. He recognized the validity of Elliot's apprehension. Andrew Morris conducted ruthless interviews. He possessed sharp intellect, articulate speech, and demonstrated mercilessness when detecting vulnerability. Celebrities had departed from his program humiliated, subjected to public scrutiny following carefully orchestrated verbal entrapments. Yet Leonardo differed from typical celebrities. "I'll participate," Leonardo decided. Elliot vocalized his frustration through the telephone connection. "Are you certain?" Leonardo nodded, despite Elliot's inability to observe this gesture. "Yes." A prolonged silence followed before Elliot finally responded, "At minimum, exercise caution. Something about this situation feels concerning." Leonardo appreciated Elliot's concern, but his decision remained unchanged. What Elliot remained unaware of was that Leonardo wasn't merely walking into dangerous territory, he was prepared for the encounter. Within a dimly illuminated production facility, Andrew Morris stood before a large display, examining footage from previous interviews. He was surrounded by his essential team, producers, writers, and strategists, all engaged in intense discussion. "This is our opportunity," Andrew declared, pausing a video segment. Leonardo DiCaprio's image filled the screen. The untouchable Leonardo, the internet's celebrated icon, the perfect subject for examination. One producer expressed hesitation. "Subject for examination?" Andrew displayed a slight smirk. "Let's be realistic. Every guest possesses a vulnerability. People admire Leonardo, certainly. But precisely for that reason, we must challenge him. If we succeed in provoking him into controversial statements, the content will achieve widespread distribution. Another team member, a young researcher, reviewed notes. But what constitutes his vulnerability? Andrew leaned backward, crossing his arms. He portrays himself as humble and compassionate. But everyone harbors contradictions. With sufficient investigation, we'll identify them. A producer frowned. What if we discover none? Andrew shrugged dismissively. Then we'll fabricate them. Silence permeated the room. Andrew tapped his desktop rhythmically, excitement evident in his expression. This transcends ordinary interviews. This will generate significant media attention. No one yet realized his accuracy, though not in the manner he anticipated. Meanwhile, in Leonardo's tranquil residence, he examined public reactions. He experienced neither surprise nor nervousness. He simply waited patiently. Because what Andrew Morris failed to comprehend was that this time, he was the one walking into a strategic trap. Andrew Morris believes he's about to embarrass Leonardo, remaining oblivious that he's proceeding directly toward his own professional downfall. Los Angeles streets buzzed with characteristic chaos, honking vehicles, pedestrian conversations, and the distant resonance of urban energy. Inside Leonardo DiCaprio's automobile, however, silence prevailed. As his dark vehicle approached the Celeb Talk studio complex, Leonardo occupied the rear seat, maintaining his composure, observing the city through tinted windows. His agent Elliot sat adjacent, displaying subtle agitation, notably less composed. "We can still reverse direction," Elliot suggested. Leonardo glanced toward him with a subtle smirk. "You speak as though I'm entering combat." Elliot scoffed, massaging his temple. "Essentially, yes. Andrew Morris doesn't merely conduct interviews, Leonardo. He attacks systematically. He establishes traps, interrupts responses, distorts statements. The moment you falter, instantly, he has his viral content." Leonardo's expression remained unchanged. "So you lack confidence in my ability to manage the situation?" Elliot released a frustrated exhalation. "I trust your abilities, but not his ethics. His approach lacks integrity." Leonardo reclined in his seat. "Then let's observe how he responds to someone who refuses to participate in his manipulative tactics." The vehicle halted before the studio entrance. Camera flashes erupted like electrical discharges as Leonardo emerged. Reporters, eager for noteworthy statements, called out from behind barriers, "Leonardo, any preliminary thoughts before the interview? Are you prepared for Morris's questioning?" Leonardo offered only a minimal smile and proceeded inside. The Celeb Talk Central operated with mechanical efficiency, bustling staff navigating complex pathways, communication devices transmitting constant information, producers pacing with documentation boards. The atmosphere was dense with anticipation. Backstage, production personnel gathered near monitoring equipment, conversing in hushed tones. This strategy could backfire. Andrew has displayed overconfidence previously, but this involves Leonardo DiCaprio. And your point is? They all eventually demonstrate vulnerability. Not him, the final producer remarked with uncertain inflection. Andrew Morris, conversely, exhibited no comparable doubt. Within his private preparation room, he smiled at his reflection, adjusting his necktie with precise confidence. He addressed his lead producer. "Everything prepared?" "Yes, we've established discussion topics. The live audience is appropriately enthusiastic, and we've strategically positioned individuals to post questionable social media content about Leonardo to generate controversy. Viewership will be substantial." Andrew nodded with satisfaction. "Excellent. My responsibility now is merely to establish the trap and allow him to proceed directly into it." The Celeb Talk Central featured cool blue illumination, with a sleek, contemporary stage design. 2 chairs occupied the central position, one designated for Andrew, another for Leonardo. The live audience murmured with expectation. Camera operators completed final adjustments. The director initiated the countdown. Live transmission in 3, 2, 1. The Celeb Talk Central introductory music played as the audience erupted in applause when Andrew Morris entered the stage, displaying his characteristic smile. Welcome, everyone. Tonight we host an exceptional guest, a Hollywood legend who has starred in some of the most significant films of our era, somehow maintaining his status as one of the most beloved celebrities worldwide. The audience's applause intensified. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Leonardo DiCaprio. Another round of enthusiastic applause accompanied Leonardo's entrance onto the stage. His movements appeared effortless, his expression relaxed. He shook Andrew's hand, acknowledged the audience with a nod, then settled into his seat with the composure of an individual who had already secured victory before the engagement commenced. Andrew, maintaining his smile, leaned forward. "Leonardo, thank you for joining us." Leonardo responded with a polite nod. "Thank you for the invitation." Andrew crossed one leg over the other, comfortably assuming his persona, the charming host, the incisive commentator, the individual who invariably secured the final statement. "Leonardo, you've cultivated something of a mythical reputation, haven't you?" Leonardo raised an eyebrow inquisitively. "Have I? Come now. Internet discourse identifies you as Hollywood's most agreeable personality. Each report about you describes some new act of generosity, multi-million-dollar donations, yielding your subway seat to others, assisting strangers." Leonardo smiled subtly but remained silent. Andrew tilted his head, feigning curiosity. "Do you ever find it exhausting to be perceived as excessively virtuous?" The audience chuckled. Whispered conversation spread throughout the room. Leonardo inhaled slowly, then responded simply, "I don't believe kindness should ever become burdensome." The audience applauded, expressing approval through murmured comments. Andrew's smile tightened imperceptibly. He continued, "But realistically, no individual achieves perfection, correct? Isn't it possible that Hollywood has constructed a narrative around your persona? Something somewhat exaggerated?" Leonardo gave a slight shrug. "I've never requested a narrative. I simply attempt to live according to principles that feel appropriate to me." Additional applause followed. Andrew's fingers drummed against his chair. The moment had arrived to intensify pressure. "Well, Leonardo, we'll explore all those aspects. But initially, let's discuss your professional career. Jordan Belfort, tremendous success. However, some critics have noted that the character's motivations, avenging a canine companion, seem almost rudimentary. Do you ever concern yourself that your roles might rely more on nostalgic appeal than substantive depth?" A subtle shift occurred within the audience atmosphere. Leonardo remained undisturbed. "I believe grief represents a universal experience. Losing something you cherish, whether human or animal, can devastate you. Sometimes narratives don't require complexity to convey significance." The audience applauded again. Andrew's smile wavered momentarily. His approach wasn't yielding the desired results. Leonardo demonstrated neither defensiveness nor perturbation. But Andrew had not concluded his efforts. He reorganized his notes, then established direct eye contact with Leonardo. "Let's proceed to the substantive discussion." The audience leaned forward attentively. "Leonardo, you consistently address generosity and philanthropy. However, certain critics suggest that your contributions to healthcare facilities and social initiatives merely represent Hollywood's version of performative activism, a methodology for advancing specific agendas under charitable pretenses." Silence enveloped the room. The audience tensed noticeably. Production crew members behind cameras exchanged meaningful glances. Andrew waited, anticipating even minimal discomfort to manifest in Leonardo's expression. Instead, Leonardo smiled, not nervously or defensively, but with calm awareness. Then he simply stated, "Kindness lacks ideological affiliation." The audience erupted into applause. Andrew blinked, evidently surprised by this response. Leonardo leaned slightly forward, maintaining steady eye contact. Assisting others doesn't constitute political action. It represents human behavior. The concept that generosity requires categorization as liberal or conservative, left or right, that's merely distraction. The world contains sufficient division. If I can provide assistance to someone, I will, without conditions. The applause intensified. Backstage, a producer whispered anxiously, "This isn't proceeding according to Andrew's strategy." Andrew moistened his lips, attempting to regain narrative control. He retained one final strategic element. He glanced briefly at his notes, then returned his attention to Leonardo. "Let's take a brief intermission. Because afterward, I have a question you'll likely find challenging to address." The screen transitioned to black. The audience murmured speculatively. Leonardo remained completely motionless, because he understood. Andrew wasn't establishing a trap, he was proceeding directly into one. The real ambush was imminent. But Leonardo wouldn't be the one caught unprepared. The stage illumination diminished slightly as Celeb Talk Central returned from its commercial interruption. The studio tension was subtle but unmistakable. Leonardo DiCaprio maintained his composed posture, relaxed yet attentive. Opposite him, Andrew Morris smiled, adjusting his shirt cuffs as he leaned forward, signaling the commencement of what he presumed would be his most strategically effective segment. The audience waited expectantly, some leaning forward, perceiving the subtle tonal shift. Andrew's subsequent approach had been meticulously calculated. He had established the contextual framework. Now the moment had arrived for his definitive strike. Andrew exhaled, maintaining measured vocal delivery. "Leonardo, let's explore something more profound." Leonardo raised an eyebrow, waiting patiently. "Your reputation within Hollywood remains unique. You're perceived as someone who rejects excessive consumption, who avoids unnecessary publicity when possible, who prioritizes humility over indulgence. And yet..." Andrew paused deliberately before continuing, "That's precisely what generates skepticism." Leonardo tilted his head slightly. "Skepticism?" Andrew's fingers tapped lightly against his armrest. "Nobody achieves perfection. Yet you're treated as though you have. Internet communities admire you. People describe you as Hollywood's final virtuous representative. But doesn't that simply represent another Hollywood fabrication? Another performance?" A murmur spread through the audience. This constituted the first genuine tactical strike. Andrew's framing avoided direct accusation while introducing doubt, compelling Leonardo to respond. Leonardo, however, remained unperturbed. He simply offered a thoughtful nod before replying, "Authenticity isn't something demonstrated. It's something lived." Andrew's confident expression faltered slightly. Leonardo continued, "How others perceive me exceeds my control. I've never attempted to project perfection. I've merely attempted to maintain decency." The audience responded favorably. Light applause rippled through the studio. Andrew shifted position, subtly tightening his grip on his documentation. He wouldn't concede audience approval to Leonardo without resistance. Andrew smiled again, this time with calculated restraint. "That's an admirable sentiment, Leonardo. But realistically, Hollywood functions on image construction. Whether you acknowledge it or not, you possess one as well. And that image carries expectations." Leonardo didn't respond immediately, allowing Andrew to continue. "People expect you to embody virtue. But doesn't that become exhausting? Never committing errors? Always portraying the humble, selfless actor?" Leonardo exhaled softly. "I believe you're misinterpreting something." Andrew's confident expression wavered. "Oh?" Leonardo leaned forward slightly, maintaining steady eye contact. "Practicing kindness isn't about fulfilling expectations. It simply involves doing what seems appropriate. If people respect that, excellent. If they don't, that's acceptable too. Andrew attempted to interject, but Leonardo continued, however, the moment you begin performing good actions merely to be perceived as virtuous, that's when authenticity disappears. The audience reacted immediately. A combination of nodding heads and light applause spread throughout the room. Andrew sensed it, control of the narrative slipping incrementally. He needed to intensify pressure. Andrew smiled again, this time with perceptible sharpness. Very well, Leonardo, let's address something specific. Leonardo waited patiently. You're recognized for donating substantial financial resources, hospitals, educational programs, charitable organizations. However, some critics argue that charity doesn't always provide solutions. That providing financial assistance doesn't address deeper systemic issues. Leonardo's expression remained unchanged, but the room's atmosphere shifted noticeably. Andrew continued pressing, isn't it reasonable to suggest that your donations, while generous, represent merely temporary solutions, methods for achieving personal satisfaction rather than implementing genuine change? A slight murmur spread through the audience. The attack was subtle, suggesting Leonardo's generosity lacked true nobility. Leonardo, characteristically, avoided responding defensively. He considered momentarily before answering, assisting someone in need doesn't indicate you've rectified the entire system. But it signifies you've helped an individual. Andrew blinked, evidently surprised by the simple yet effective response. Leonardo continued, I don't donate expecting to transform global conditions overnight. I donate because someone, somewhere, requires assistance today. The audience erupted into applause. Andrew quickly interjected before it could intensify, but don't you believe true empowerment involves teaching self-sufficiency rather than simply providing financial resources? Leonardo offered a slight smile. You presume those concepts are mutually exclusive. Andrew hesitated. Leonardo leaned back slightly. People conceptualize assistance as transactional, as though giving diminishes something. But authentic generosity functions differently. It doesn't concern control or authority. It involves giving without anticipating reciprocation. The applause grew louder. Even audience members could sense it now, Leonardo wasn't succumbing to any of Andrew's tactical approaches. And Andrew recognized this reality. Andrew glanced at the clock. Time was diminishing, and Leonardo had maintained composure throughout. This necessitated implementing the most challenging question of the evening. Andrew's tone softened, adopting near-sympathetic quality. Leonardo, you've experienced greater tragedy than most individuals ever will. Your father departed during your youth. You lost your closest friend, your daughter, your romantic partner. You've endured suffering that no individual should experience. The audience fell silent. Elliot, observing from backstage, became visibly tense. Andrew continued, his voice subtly manipulative, and yet, here you remain, still giving, still helping. But tell me, does it ever feel inauthentic? Heavy silence descended upon the studio. Leonardo's expression remained steady. Andrew leaned forward. Isn't it exhausting to perpetually pretend you're managing adequately? The trap was established. The expectation appeared obvious. Andrew wanted Leonardo to demonstrate vulnerability, to acknowledge weakness, to disrupt the illusion of the unshakable virtuous figure. Instead, Leonardo smiled softly, not from amusement but from understanding. Then he answered, simply and honestly, pain doesn't eliminate kindness. If anything, it makes kindness more essential. The audience remained motionless. Andrew, for the first time, appeared speechless. Leonardo's voice maintained composure, but his words carried significant impact. Loss doesn't terminate compassion. It reinforces why compassion matters. Complete silence pervaded the room. Then waves of applause erupted. Andrew leaned back, visibly stunned. He had attempted to expose Leonardo, to question his authenticity, to break his composure. Instead, Leonardo had accomplished what no previous guest had managed. He had transformed every attack, every loaded question, every concealed insult into moments of clarity. And Andrew had lost control of the entire interview. As cameras focused on his expression, it became evident, Andrew Morris no longer directed the proceedings. And Leonardo DiCaprio had only begun his response. Andrew still retained one final strategic element. But it might constitute the action that terminates his professional career permanently. The Celeb Talk Central studio atmosphere was dense with tension. Andrew Morris sat opposite Leonardo DiCaprio, clutching his prompt cards more firmly than previously. He had attempted to undermine Leonardo's composure, trap him, pressure him, destabilize him. But with each strategic maneuver, Leonardo had navigated through effortlessly, calm, steady, unshaken. Andrew's options were diminishing. He had one remaining strategy. If successful, Leonardo's flawless public image would finally show imperfection. Andrew forced a smooth smile. "Leonardo, let's discuss your charitable contributions." Leonardo waited patiently. "You donate millions to healthcare facilities, struggling families, and charitable organizations. That's widely recognized." A pause followed. Then Andrew leaned forward slightly. "But how much genuinely concerns helping others? And how much merely concerns your public image?" A murmur swept through the audience. Andrew had implicitly suggested Leonardo's kindness was performative, a fabrication. The accusation's gravity lingered in the atmosphere. Leonardo inhaled slowly. Then he smiled, not from amusement but from understanding. Then he inquired, "Andrew, when did you last help someone?" The audience inhaled sharply. Andrew froze. For the first occasion, he lacked response. He released a nervous chuckle. "That's not the relevant question here." Leonardo nodded. "Precisely." The audience stirred noticeably. Leonardo's voice remained steady but firm. "I don't publicize my donations. Others do that. But if visible kindness inspires additional kindness, what harm results?" Andrew attempted to speak, but Leonardo continued, "I don't donate seeking recognition. I donate because I possess that capability. And if that motivates one additional person to help others, that represents positive impact." Applause erupted. Andrew's jaw tightened visibly. He was losing audience support. He had one remaining strategic element. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Very well, Leonardo. Let's address politics." The audience tensed noticeably. "Your donations align with certain social policies. Some might even describe them as deliberate pause, wealth redistribution. Somewhat socialist, wouldn't you agree?" The trap was established. If Leonardo agreed, he would alienate segments of his audience. If he denied it, he would appear defensive, as though justifying assisting others. Andrew's confident expression returned. But Leonardo remained composed. Instead, he reversed the tactical approach. The concept that helping others constitutes political action represents the actual problem. Silence followed. Then, maintaining the same calm, effortless vocal delivery, he stated, "Feeding hungry individuals isn't socialism. It's kindness." Andrew's confident expression vanished. Leonardo leaned forward slightly. "Ensuring sick children receive medication doesn't constitute political statement. It represents basic human decency." A single applause. Then another. Subsequently, the entire studio erupted in enthusiastic approval. Andrew's fingers tightened around his prompt cards. Events weren't proceeding according to his design. Leonardo had navigated through every trap, every complication, every accusation without a single misstep. And now Andrew stood exposed. The Celeb Talk Central studio atmosphere had transformed. The physical environment remained unchanged, illumination still bright, cameras still operational, audience still observing. But Andrew Morris perceived the shift. For years, he had mastered guest manipulation, pushing them into viral moments generating headlines. But tonight differed fundamentally, because Leonardo DiCaprio hadn't participated in the manipulative game. He hadn't become defensive. He hadn't faltered. He hadn't evaded or deflected. Instead, he had accomplished something far more significant: he had maintained complete control. Andrew recognized this reality. Worse still, the audience recognized it equally. Andrew forced a smile, though his thoughts raced frantically. This represented his final opportunity. He needed to redirect the conversation, reclaim control. He leaned forward, chuckling lightly. "Leonardo, you've certainly provided thoughtful responses tonight." Leonardo, maintaining perfect composure, nodded. "I appreciate that acknowledgement." Andrew continued, forcing conversation toward safer territory, "But let's move away from serious topics. You're among the world's most recognized celebrities. What's forthcoming for Leonardo DiCaprio?" A distraction, an opportunity to conclude the program with lighter content. Leonardo smiled slightly. Hopefully, a quiet dinner following this engagement. The audience laughed, tension briefly dissipating. Even Andrew chuckled, though the response appeared forced, constrained. Leonardo continued, "I have several projects under development. But honestly, I'm simply appreciating the present moment." Andrew nodded acknowledgement, but he recognized the conclusion had arrived. Leonardo wouldn't provide viral content. No opportunities remained for pressure tactics. And most significantly, Andrew understood this reality. Andrew observed the audience, searching for reactions, an opportunity to seize control. Instead, he witnessed something worse. They no longer focused attention on him, they observed Leonardo, not merely watching, but supporting him. Their expressions revealed respect, admiration, loyalty. This no longer represented mere interview, this constituted reckoning. Andrew had attempted to expose Leonardo. Instead, he had exposed himself. A producer's voice transmitted through Andrew's earpiece, "Andrew, we're concluding in 60 seconds. Andrew swallowed nervously. For the first occasion in his own studio, he felt diminished. He forced a final, gracious smile. "Well, Leonardo, it's been pleasurable hosting you on our program." Leonardo nodded, maintaining characteristic warmth. "Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate our discussion." Discussion, not debate, not interrogation, simply discussion. Andrew resented the effortless quality of that description. The cameras recorded the closing segment. That concludes tonight's program. Thank you for watching. The applause was substantial, but it wasn't directed toward Andrew. It celebrated Leonardo. As Andrew shook his hand and departed the stage, his thoughts already raced frantically. Because while the program had concluded, the consequences were just beginning. The interview had concluded. The Celeb Talk Central theme music played as credits appeared and stage illumination dimmed. Applause continued, but not acknowledging Andrew Morris, it celebrated Leonardo DiCaprio. Andrew forced a smile, shaking Leonardo's hand one final time. "Thank you again, Leonardo. Always a pleasure." Leonardo, perpetually gracious, nodded. "Take care, Andrew." Then, without hesitation, he exited the stage. That moment marked Andrew's realization, not merely the awkward tension pervading the room, but the comprehensive transformation occurring everywhere. Something had gone terribly wrong. Andrew barely processed the disaster before a producer approached urgently, displaying a mobile device. "Andrew, you need to see this." He accepted it, his confidence collapsing as he observed endless notifications. Trending first position worldwide, Leonardo destroys. Social media already criticized him severely. His professional reputation, the incisive, fearless interviewer who exposed Hollywood's elite, was disintegrating in real time. More concerning? He wasn't merely ridiculed, he faced comprehensive criticism. On Facebook, the narrative proved brutal. Andrew Morris believed he would corner Leonardo. Instead, he merely embarrassed himself. Leonardo didn't require defensive tactics. He simply allowed Andrew to self-destruct. Andrew Morris, helping people is political. Leonardo, no, it's simply basic decency. Definitive statement. The most devastating aspect? Even journalists opposed him now. Leonardo continued his life unchanged. Because ultimately, one man had devoted his career to diminishing others. The other had dedicated his life to elevating them. And only one retained future prospects. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoy this video and learned a lesson. I would be grateful for your likes, and don't forget to subscribe and comment on the video. See you soon.